What's the brand mission? We're like, we're making health and sustainability 50 times more fun.
Welcome to the Whole Brand Briefing, actionable ideas to help build a world with more whole brands. A whole brand is an organization that treats everything it does as the brand, from marketing ideas to business ideas and all the ideas in between. This is the Whole Brand Briefing.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Whole Brand Briefing. My name is Tim Gallus, and I'm the director of the Whole Brand Project. In a few seconds, we're going to hear from Mike Cessario. Mike is the founder and CEO of the very irreverent water brand, Liquid Death. Mike is building a very special and unique whole brand, and the way he's doing it is by combining health and edginess to create something quite special, and I can't wait for you to hear about it. So let's get going. Mike, thank you for joining the Whole Brand Briefing. We can't wait to hear your thoughts on building brands for the future.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
So speaking of brands, what is a brand? Is there a brand that you're inspired by that has always been a little bit of a, whether it's for your own brand, but it's always been a little bit of a beacon? It's had kind of the right attitude, the right mix of things, and maybe even a brand you can't live without.
Brands that were entertaining people, where the things they made felt, and I say that we do this with Liquid Death, or at least we try to, where these things that they make feel more like they could belong on Saturday Night Live than they do with the rest of commercials, or the rest of whatever. Like it's real entertainment. That stuff was always sort of like the beacon for me, and ultimately what led to me eventually kind of wanting to actually work in advertising and kind of pursue that route in college.
Can you start with how you got to deciding to create a product and a brand? Can you give us a little bit of the origin story?
Yeah, and it's kind of a funny, but like it was the result of a decline of my advertising career. So my first job out of school was at Crispin Porter Bogusky in Boulder. It was the only agency I really wanted to work at, because when I was in school, my buddy was an intern at Crispin in Miami, and I saw the Hoopla book. I saw all this cool stuff that they made that to me felt very punk rock. Like there was over the top, super smart, clever, cool, like no other, like most of the ads they made, I had never really even seen before. But when I saw that they made them, I was like, I want to make that. So kind of was dead set on that. Worked at that agency in Boulder, worked on really cool stuff for a year and a half, or, including my internship there, like almost 2 years, and worked on cool stuff, worked with cool people. And I didn't realize that, like, in the world of agencies, an agency like that, how much of an anomaly that kind of like just truly disruptive, fuck you kind of approach really was. So then, I ended up leaving to go make, a lot more money at another agency in Seattle that I really didn't like. So then I got offered another job in San Francisco at another agency called 11. And they were kind of a hybrid. Like they were founded by a guy who was like a Pentagram design partner guy, and then like an old Goodby copywriter. So it was kind of this mix of design and kind of some Goodby conceptual San Francisco kind of agency. And that was cool. I was there for, a couple of years, but the same thing, it still wasn't that Crispin crazy. Like it was a little more design, like let's just make stuff look nice, give it a good headline. That's all we really need. And now I'm like, let's see, at this point, I'm almost like 5 years into my career. And I'm like, I'm trying to apply at agencies like Wyden and try to get back into Crispin, because I realized what I left there and Goodby. And none of these agencies would hire me because all they really care about is, well, what's the biggest thing that you've worked on recently? And when you don't have clients who are buying that great kind of work, and you don't have an agency that's all built around making the top funny conceptual kind of work, you're just not going to be able to make it or sell it. So your book just starts dying to like something that you can't get jobs now. And you try to show, I would try to show like campaigns that were just spec campaigns just to show how I thought. But at that level, they're like, yeah, we don't really want to see spec work. We want to see real work. So I kind of was at this impasse where I'm like, crap, like I've applied to every top agency doing the things that I want to do. They're all rejecting me. I'm kind of stuck here. So I'm like, my only choice is if I want to make cool marketing, I need to create my own product to make marketing for. And that was kind of the like switch where I then started thinking about, okay, I'm going to make my own product. What's that going to be? And the first thing that I created was actually a liquor company. I was working on Virgin America, the airline at the time at the agency. And I was really into Richard Branson. I was starting to read some of his books. And I loved the Virgin ethos where, as a business, they would find a really stale category and be the only cool sort of sexy brand in that category, like air travel, where it was like, air travel was like buying bus fare and people hated planes and there was nothing good about any plane. They came in with like mood lighting and everyone gets their own private screen and they did these sexy, funny ads. So I took that ethos and said, okay, if I'm going to create my own brand, let me find a really stale product category where I can make the only cool brand or one of the only cool brands in the category. And for liquor, I found brandy. So we're like, hey, like literally in the liquor store, it was like there was dust on the bottles on the shelf. And I tasted it. I'm like, well, this is actually a lot like whiskey, just a little sweeter. So then I came up with this idea to create this like Americana, almost whiskey-esque brandy. Found a distillery in Northern California that had been making brandy for 20 years. Went up there, pitched it to them, because in advertising, the one thing that we're great at is making PDFs and decks. I feel like we're in the deck business more than anything else. So I was good at making decks. So I made a great deck, pitched these guys, and they're like, oh, this is great. You know, we've been waiting for someone to try to mainstream brandy in a way. So then they produced a product for us. I partnered with some people that were like former Sailor Jerry rum and Hendrick's gin. And we started kind of building this brand. They were based in Philadelphia, which is where I was originally from. So I moved back to Philly to kind of try to get this liquor company off the ground. And that was like my first real entrepreneurial experience. Then I realized with liquor, it was a little bit less about marketing and more about like bartender acquisition and tastings and these things, because you can't sell directly to a person. Someone can't just come to your liquor website and buy your liquor. It's illegal. They have to buy it from a store. So you have to go through a distributor and all of that. So then I kind of realized like, okay, you guys who I built this with, you're passionate about this stuff. I was more on the brand marketing side. You take it from here. I'm going to go back to my agency life and I'll figure out like whatever my next thing is. I knew once I did the liquor company that I liked being an entrepreneur. Like I liked building my own thing and doing all the different things that had to come into building something that's not just marketing. It's like, oh, figuring out production, talking to these people, doing this, getting the taste right, the packaging, the marketing, the social, the everything. I loved the whole building thing. So I knew I was going to do something else. I just didn't know what or when.
Did that surprise you that all those different pieces started to be the thing you liked versus just the marketing?
Not so much, because I think my early days of being in a band where the whole punk rock scene is all about DIY, like we'd always done everything ourselves. It was like, hey, we build the brand, we book the shows, we sell the CDs, we silkscreen the shirts, we sell the shirts at the shows. Like we find the money to record and we go and record, and then we make the album and we sell the album. So it was kind of like running your own little mini brand, whether you realize that's what you're actually doing or company. And you just get so used to doing all that stuff yourself for so many years that I feel like it's just kind of in you a little bit. So when I actually did it, it was all that stuff kind of rehashed again, which I liked, you know? So yeah, I think I always kind of knew that I liked that thing. I just didn't know what exactly it would kind of transform it to. That's when, you know, again, I started thinking more about my next thing. And then I started thinking about, well, you know, why can't more healthy products be marketed in the same bold, irreverent way as all the junk food has been marketed for decades, like candy and alcohol and snacks. And, you know, water was the healthiest thing you could drink. I always drank a lot of water. I hadn't drank soda for years, or like once in a while. It's like you treat a soda like it's an ice cream sundae. Like every once in a while, it's fine, but drinking it 3 times a day is kind of insane. So I had the idea with water. Everybody needs to drink more water. And I remember, everybody drinks water, like bands on tour. Like I remember them saying like water was such a precious commodity on tour. And so all of a sudden it kind of came around water. And then it was like, okay, how can we market like brand and package water in a way that feels like alcohol and junk food and all the bad stuff you're not supposed to have? And then this whole plastic issue that everybody's talking about. Well, cans are infinitely recyclable. That's great. And, beers and tall boys. So let's make a tall boy. So all this stuff kind of started shaping Liquid Death as like a side project while I still was working other agency jobs. And then, it was like early 2018. The idea for Liquid Death was kind of crystallized, and I put it on the internet first before we ever had real product, because I kind of knew that, trying to raise money around the idea of Liquid Death and that's it would be really hard because it sounds stupid, ridiculous. It's not going to work. So we just designed a Photoshop render of a can, shot this $1,500 video that I kind of wrote the concept for, and my buddy hired. And then one of the producers at Barkley, Sean Wallace, he was a freelance producer for us that I'd worked with for a while, and he helped me produce that just as a favor to do. And, it just came together as like a fun thing. And we put it on Facebook, no Instagram, no Twitter, just Facebook, put a little bit of paid media behind it. And like a few months later, it's got a few million views. The page has like 60,000 plus followers, and we're getting hundreds of messages from people being like, is this real? Where do you buy this? And then I use all of that traction to then sort of de-risk the bet of giving me capital. And then I was able to raise like, a round of funding from friends, family, previous advertising bosses, things like that, to just get enough to produce a minimum run of canned water. And then, then it kind of just went from there. Like once we actually launched it on the internet, it was like our first month selling, we did like $100,000 in sales, and we only spent like $2,000 on marketing that first month. And then it was like, then at that point, we had even more data to raise more money. And then it just kind of kept growing fast. And then, knock on wood, it had been not too difficult for us to raise, just because we've had this magic almost momentum that no other brand had had. That's the kind of things that actually gets investors excited. Like they don't want to invest in just another beverage brand. They want to invest what they think is like a one-of-a-kind beverage that never comes around. Like that's what they want to put their money in. So when you can actually tell a believable story around that, it definitely makes it easier than what other companies go through trying to raise.
Well, it's amazing how fast that happened. Was there a eureka moment when you thought of the idea of how do I use those same tactics to sell something healthy? Was there that moment where you got super excited? Oh, water or Liquid Death? Was there, being in advertising, was there an equivalent eureka moment when you felt like you've got the idea?
I think when we landed on the name, that's when I really like had like the yes, like this, because for me, the bar I was setting, I was trying to really be honest about was, hey, knowing that we're not going to have real marketing dollars for a long time, we're not going to be able to pay for eyeballs. What is a product that when someone sees it on the shelf, they're actually going to have to stop and be like, what is that? Potentially pick it up. And even anyone who does get it, the high probability they are taking out their phone, taking a photo of it and posting it on social. Oh my God, you have to see this. Or they think it's funny if they're drinking it and they actually want to post a photo of themselves drinking it because there's something socially shareable and interesting happening. that was the bar I knew we had to get to. And when you really start taking that bar seriously, a lot of ideas die really quickly because there's not many things people will actually do that. And then once we kind of landed on Liquid Death and kind of the design and look, it was like I knew, like, yes, like I would bet that people will share this thing. Like, this will create conversation, a stir, without me having to pay for everybody to talk about it. So
in your background from bands and the things that you've learned through music and bands and the things that you've learned through advertising, anything else that you bring into the company from your background?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, the early days of my career at Crispin, and, they had, and for me, like, even to this day, it's like Alex Bogusky is probably one of my sort of, the guy I looked to for a long time of like, yes, like I resonate with how you think about things. And I felt like I thought about things in a similar way. And I took a lot of my experience there almost very directly and applied it to Liquid Death, in my own way, in terms of like, as you think about, hey, what are things that get press? Like, what's going to get written about by the press? Press is never going to write about a beautiful print ad. The press is never going to write about a kind of funny commercial. Like, they write about things that feel like nobody's ever seen them before. They write about things that could be potentially controversial. Is this okay? Is it not? So I took a lot of that thinking that we did on all kinds of other brands where, you would go into these big corporate boardrooms and it was hard to sell a lot of big brands on those types of things. And they inevitably almost always got watered down a little bit to a certain degree. But now when you've got that kind of thinking and there's no more client, like I get to kind of put my money where my mouth is and see, does this actually work? What happens? I think it became a really, like you really saw the real power of it, I think, when it was kind of unbridled. So yeah, I definitely brought, a lot of that. And just the collective experience of working for agencies. Typically brands don't come to agencies when they're absolutely killing it and everything's perfect. It's like they tend to come to agencies when, hey, they're struggling, they're trying to change perception, like, hey, how do we fix this? Like, how do we become more relevant? So you learn a lot about business problems across all different verticals. Like, why is this brand no longer relevant? Where did these guys kind of screw up or make a bad decision? And I think just collectively absorbing all that over the years, like you just start to have a little bit of a better radar, I think, of like where some of the potholes are and like where to be careful and like what things really matter and what things maybe don't matter as much.
Internally at Liquid Death, do you have any kind of foundational language that you use? Are there things that kind of guide and inspire you as a group? How do you kind of think about that as an internal kind of mechanism?
Well, one thing, we try to do it as much as possible. It slips sometimes, but we have a pretty hard rule that you're not allowed to use the word consumer at Liquid Death. It's an imaginary thing. There's no such thing as a consumer. Like, we're people and sometimes we buy things, but a consumer paints this picture that, oh, the only purpose of this thing is to buy. And it's like, it seems way more easy to make a consumer laugh than to make your friend laugh or to make a person laugh. So I think that's something, just to kind of bake into our processes is, hey, we don't ever use the word consumer. Everything should be people or person. And it makes the bar higher for how you talk to them or how hard it is to actually get a person to do something versus to get a consumer to do something. So that's one little thing, I think.
No, that's great. Is there, when you are working on a content piece, something that you think is funny or you think is close, do you have any sort of gut reaction to, yes, this is a Liquid Death piece, or no, this isn't quite there yet? How would you kind of frame that? What makes it and what doesn't?
Yeah, it's a complicated question because I think, it's almost like, how would you say what makes a Saturday Night Live thing and what doesn't? It's like there's things, it's like you can kind of, hey, there's always a little bit of edge or there's always a little bit of, current topic like weaved in, like, oh, there's always a celebrity. Like there's things about Saturday Night Live that you could kind of get the rough range on. And for us, I think it's kind of similar. It's like, what's what I love about the brand is we don't have, like, we're not going by that old model of brands have to do every single thing exactly the same. It's like the whole 360 marketing. It's like the billboard needs to be the same as the commercial, the same as this, and the same as this. So then all the things linked together absolutely perfectly. It's like, I think it's a lot more okay for brands to be more like actual people that have various sides to them. You know, it's like, if you think about the people who you're closest to or that you love hanging out with most, they're probably not just one thing. It's like, yes, they might be super funny, but part of what makes them really funny is you've seen them have a really soft emotional side also. Or, oh, when it's time to be serious, like they're one of the best people to talk to make you feel better about something. But then, yeah, when you go out to party, they're the craziest person that, you know. So I think it's okay for brands to be more human and show more sides and not try to just be this one thing always. It's like, be the right thing for what the moment is that you have, you know. So we have, and that's the hard thing. It's like, as you bring people into Liquid Death, it's like everyone just immediately thinks like, oh, everything we do has to be so funny and sarcastic. It's like, well, when a customer has a problem and is emailing, it's not okay to be funny. Like that's when we switch over to, we're going to talk to you like you're the most important person in the world. I'm going to talk to you exactly how I would talk to my brother if there was a problem with his order. Mike, the Liquid Death never showed up. Oh, dude, so sorry. Got it. Don't worry about it. Like this happened. Got it. You know, not AJ. Thank you for reaching out to your brother, Mike. I will get back to you when, you know.
You know, I love your reference to band and wanting to do everything. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like on the inside? Employees, customers, anything about the internal mechanisms of Liquid Death?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I used this reference earlier this morning. Somehow we were talking about best Tom Hanks movies, and we were talking about Big. And for me, this feels like I'm living the premise from Big. It's like a 13-year-old kid becomes big and is now running some marketing corporation. It's like, and doing all of the things that he would want to do as a kid. It's like, that's kind of how I approach this. It's like all my years working for big and small agencies, like giant corporate agencies, working on giant corporate accounts and, you know, not always being the perfect fit for those places. It's like Liquid Death is a way, like, how do I create that dream company that doesn't exist or that I've always wanted to work for? Like, what are the things that I hated doing, you know, in corporate things, and what are the things that I loved? And like, how, you know, we've been able to build this really cool culture here where I know recently we did our like employee NPS score, and I think it's like a 95, which is like far higher than any other company that's measured. And I think, yeah, it's like, at the end of the day, we're all about kindness at Liquid Death. Like, cause that's sort of the thing about it. It's like, we do edgy stuff, but it's in service of something that's good. It's like health and sustainability meets edge creates this really unique, lovable thing. If it's just edge with none of the other stuff, it's not that interesting. If it's just good and feel good and there's not much edge, it's kind of boring. At the end of the day, that's what we say. Like, what's the brand mission? We're like, we're making health and sustainability 50 times more fun. That's kind of the brand ethos. And I think, yeah, that goes through all aspects of the company. Like,
yeah, when you think about the brand you want to make, or when you think about something holistic, we use the term whole brand, but when you think about a brand really running, you know, on all cylinders, inside and out, what does that make you think?
I think similar to all the stuff we've been talking about, that like a person or even like a movie, that it's well-rounded. You know, like if you think of even like what makes a great comedy film, it's funny every second the whole way. It's like, no, there's really funny moments. There's probably poignant moments. There's some kind of arc. there's, it checks all these boxes where at the end of the day, it feels like this whole complete thing that has all these different elements that all kind of work together to, be greater than the sum of its parts, for the lack of using a cliche. But yeah, I feel like for me, that's how we think about our brand, or at least how I think about our brand. If I think about it as like what makes it whole is that we've got all these different sides to us, and they all kind of serve their own purpose, but they all sort of all fit together. And same thing with like hiring. It's like we've got the misfits and the rebels and the funny people, and we've got the like super nerdy, analytical people to do those jobs. Like, was that, we know that like there's a certain person for every job, and it's not like you need the same exact person for all these different jobs. So we have this nice blend of all these, these different things that make a bigger collective thing.
What is your authority to go beyond where you are right now? Where do you see the brand going, and what kind of excites you about the future?
Yeah, I think what we're starting to prove is that this brand is a lot bigger than just, still water in a can where we started. We launched still water. That did really well. Then we launched, premium sparkling water. That did really well. Now we just launched flavored sparkling water just in late January of this year. And those have gone absolutely kind of ballistic. Amazon's a pretty good litmus test for a lot of other retail. And just since launching flavors since January, our 3 flavor SKUs are already over 40% of the revenue. And it's all incremental. We basically doubled our revenue on Amazon over 4 months just because we introduced flavors. I think that's the exciting thing for me, is like, how do we continue to go disrupt other healthy beverage categories and be a cool brand and make it, make it more okay to drink healthy things at all different kinds of places, like bars, house parties, nightclubs, skate parks, wherever, where you don't typically think, oh yeah, you see lots of people walking around with a bottle of water or a whatever healthy thing you can think of. So yeah, for me, that's what the future is.
Well, congratulations on all of that success with the new categories. That's really great. Back to the band idea, which I love. If Liquid Death were a band or a combination of bands, who might they be?
I'd say it's one of 2 bands, and they're both kind of like theatrical joke bands, which would either be Spinal Tap, just because it was a complete joke and it was like not supposed to be serious. It had all the elements of metal in this, but it had this comedy, not taking ourselves seriously element. And then probably a band like Guar that was like, it's theatrics. It started as a comic book. Like, people go to the shows because it's funny and they get the joke and they're in on the joke and they get that it's not serious and it's like a cartoon. So, and that they last for, it has the staying power because of that for a long time. It's like people are still watching Spinal Tap and using Spinal Tap movie references. And, Guar has been around for over 30 years, and people are still going to Guar shows, and it's still a thing. So yeah, I think something like that.
I'm glad we got Guar into this interview. It's just a fun band to say. Hey, Mike, thank you so much. Really great. It's really fun to kind of hear your story. As someone that loves great brands, not all brands, but really great brands, it's really fun to hear your story and hear about all your success. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right,
have a good night. See ya.
You too.